Today's video is going to be on my breastfeeding tips coming from a mother with low breast milk supply. Hi, I'm Dani and this is Practical Mummy Loves Luxury. Welcome to my series of videos for new or expecting parents. Today I'll be sharing my tips that allowed me to establish breastfeeding at 5 weeks and exclusive breastfeeding at 8 weeks. When I kept up these practices, I was subsequently able to breastfeed my daughter up to the age of 11 months. So I said I was able to establish breastfeeding at 5 weeks. For reference, I understand that women typically establish breastfeeding at the age of 1 or 2 weeks. Initially, because my breast milk supply was low, I did have to supplement with formula. And it was only around 8 weeks that I was able to drop formula feeding. And just to complete the picture for you, in Australia, we can commence solids between the age of 4 to 6 months. And because my supply wasn't particularly high, I did commence solids at 20 weeks, so around 5 months. And please don't get me wrong, I'm not here to complain that my breastfeeding journey was tough, because I do know of a lot of other women who had a much harder time than me. And at the same time, I'm not here to try and beat my chest. The thing is that I found that I learned all these tips in a very piecemeal way. And I have to wonder whether if I got all this information all in one hit, would I have had an easier time? So I thought I'd put it all together in one video and hopefully this will help someone. The content includes a mishmash of breastfeeding products as well as techniques. And please do not take this as medical advice, as every mother will be different. In conjunction with watching videos like these, I would suggest that you have a chat to a lactation consultant or your family doctor to get advice that's tailored to you. And just so you know, I've already made a whole video on preparing for breastfeeding before the baby is born. There I talk about a number of products as well as equipment that can help with breast milk supply. So I'll just be briefly talking about these products that I've already mentioned in the other video, otherwise this video is going to get way too long. So if you haven't watched that video already, go ahead and watch it. I'll leave a card up here for you. And without further ado, let's get started. The first thing is latching techniques, and the information that I've got is from raisingchildren.net.au. So the general idea is that you want the baby to latch onto the breast, not just the nipple. When the baby has a really good latch, it is a lot less painful for mum, and they're able to also get better suction and better supply. In terms of positioning, it's about getting the baby to the breast, not the breast to the baby. So make sure that you're first sitting in a comfortable position. And one of the sayings that I remembered that helped me guide the position of my baby was belly to belly. So the baby's belly against mummy's belly. You can subsequently tickle the baby's lips with the nipple, which will stimulate the baby's mouth to open really wide. And then you would hug the baby to the breast so that they get a good mouthful of the breast. And once the baby's attached, when you look down at the baby, their lips should look really wide open, like the K on a Special K cereal box. The next thing to be aware of is nipple trauma and pain. I just had some flashbacks just then. And it's painful because the nipple is very sensitive. However, over time, say over about 3 to 4 weeks, the nipple pain does subside as the skin around the nipple starts to harden. And this is when I found multi-mams extremely useful. Essentially, multi-mams are cool compresses that help alleviate some nipple pain at the start. Multi-mams come in a pack of 12. When you open them up, they do come in a folded piece of rectangle. Instead of using one pack per nipple, you can cut up the little rectangle into 2 halves and place 1 half on each nipple. The other thing that avoids nipple trauma is breaking suction. So when you're ready to unlatch the baby, don't just pull the baby away from the breast. You can break suction by using your clean little finger and gently inserting it between your baby's lips and the breast. The next item is nipple shields. Now, I never used nipple shields and no one told me about them until I didn't need them anymore. Nipple shields go over the nipple while the baby is breastfeeding. It's perforated, so it means that milk can still flow through to the baby from the breast. I thought nipple shields were worn when the baby is not breastfeeding to minimize trauma between your clothing and the nipple. Live and let learn, right? And there you go, I'm sharing it with you. The next thing is the breast pump. I use the Spectra S2 hospital grade double electric breast pump. I love that pump. I don't have it anymore, but if I was to buy another pump again, that would be the pump I purchase. When the baby is newborn, sometimes just getting them to latch on the nipple, they don't tend to suck for very long because they might fatigue quite quickly, or because there's not a lot of breast milk supply, they stop sucking. And that's when a breast pump would come in really handy, because that will continue to provide you the stimulation to produce breast milk. So a breast pump is absolutely critical if you intend on breastfeeding. You should have one before the baby arrives. One hack I do want to show you, because I was watching a video and I found out that another mother had this problem. The breast pump will come with some tubing. Because I don't have my breast pump anymore, I can't show you the tubing of my breast pump, but I've got other very similar tubing. If you regularly attach and detach these tubings from the breast pump, the ends of the tubing may loosen, and that could potentially affect your suction or even affect its ability to stay on the pump. What you can do is you just cut back approximately 1 to 2 centimeters from there, and you're good to go again. There was another YouTube mum that I was watching, and she didn't realize that she could just cut it. So she was about to buy a whole new set of tubing, and really that's not necessary. The next couple of things I want to talk about is a warm compress as well as breast massage. This especially helps if your breasts are really engorged because they're full of milk and it seems as though the milk can't be expressed. So you can use a warm compress and place them against the breast for about 10 minutes or so. That could help the milk ducts dilate and subsequently milk flow. Breast massage is also really helpful, and you would do it manually with your hands. So literally you're massaging the breast from the chest wall down towards the nipple to try and get the milk out. And you can do a breast massage before pumping or before breastfeeding. I also found it extremely helpful to do a breast massage while I was pumping. The next thing is DIY breast pump holders or breast pump bras. If there's nothing you do this. This enables you to have hands-free pumping. And again, I've talked about it in my earlier videos. So if you're interested, I suggest that you go ahead and watch that video. I've taken you away from the main video because I didn't like the original version, so here I am recording it again. So the next thing I was going to talk about was setting a breastfeeding or a pumping schedule. In general, it is advised that women breastfeed or pump every 3 to 4 hours. At the start, for me, because my breast milk supply was very low and I also found it quite difficult to tolerate breastfeeding, I found it really painful. I was mostly pumping and my daughter was being formula fed. When I first started pumping, I had really low volume, something like 10 mils. For reference, I think it's reasonable to start with say 50 mils and that gradually builds up to say 90 to 150 mils. If you can get 200 mils per pump, that's a really good volume. And when I say per pump, that's the total volume that you get from both breasts. So my daughter was being mostly formula fed and I was there trying to get my breast milk supply up using the pump. And when you do that, you need to pump every 3 to 4 hours. And I was told we only need to pump in our waking hours. We don't have to deliberately wake up at night to pump. Somehow our body will adjust to that, and that certainly worked for me. Once I was able to tolerate breastfeeding, I was breastfeeding my daughter and she may only latch for about 10 minutes because the supply was low. Subsequently, she'll be topped up with formula. And then after that, in order to get my breast milk supply up, I would go back to the pump and pump for 10 to 20 minutes. And the idea of doing that post breastfeeding pump is to get out as much milk as possible or whatever's left behind in the breast, and to also stimulate your body to make more breast milk. So yes, you heard me right. You breastfeed your baby, you feed them with formula if they need it, and you subsequently go back to the pump and pump again. It is extremely arduous. On the other hand, there are some mothers as well who end up not breastfeeding and exclusively pumping. And this could be for a number of reasons. One of them could be latching issues, so the baby may have a tongue tie and that's affecting their ability to latch and suck off the breast. So in that case, the mum would have to pump and bottle feed the breast milk to the baby. Mums who exclusively pump do pump every 3 to 4 hours, but they're on a schedule. For a mum who's on a 3-hour schedule, you have to pump every 3 hours on the dot to try and maintain your breast milk supply. This means that if you pumped at 12, the next time you pump is at 3. So it's not that you pump at 12, you finish at 12:20, and the next time you pump is 3:20. That's not the case. Yes, this is extremely arduous as well. And this was something I did later on once I returned to work and I was still breastfeeding my baby, so I was expressing my breast milk at work. If you're wondering how to go out with a schedule like this, you're right, it can be quite challenging. It may be an option to go to a family's house where there may be a place for you to breastfeed or pump when it's convenient, or to other public facilities that do have breastfeeding amenities. And an example of this in Australia would be the Westfield malls. The other thing to be aware of when it comes to maintaining a pumping schedule is the potential of developing blocked ducts or mastitis if you skip a pump. And that certainly happened to me. So if I delayed a pump or breastfeeding by an hour, I developed blocked ducts. Fortunately, I never developed mastitis, but I've heard from other women that it's absolutely horrible. When I developed blocked ducts, I had to use a warm compress to try and dilate the ducts that were blocked. And I had to do a breast massage and either breastfeed or try to pump to try and get rid of that blockage. It was certainly painful. Well, that's all for this section. I'm going to take you back to the main video. Next, I have a really handy tip that I discovered later on as well. It's more a time-saving tip. So as you can imagine, when you're using a breast pump, there will be bits of the pump that is in contact with breast milk. You don't have to wash this equipment every time you pump. All you need to do is to place it in a clean bag or a clean container. What I used was a sealing lunch bag and then place it in the refrigerator. And you only need to wash the equipment once every 24 hours. And essentially, you reduce the number of times of washing your breast pump equipment from 6-7 times a day to just once a day. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is storage of expressed breast milk. As to how long breast milk can last in the fridge, the advice does vary from resource to resource. My understanding is if you leave breast milk in the fridge, it's good for 3 days. If you leave it in the freezer, it is good for 3 months. And if you deep freeze it, it is good for 6 months. The next thing to just be aware of is freezer burn. And that's when the frozen breast milk is exposed to air after it's become frozen. Now, freezer burn does not change the quality of the breast milk, so your baby can still drink it after it's been thawed. However, I understand that it does change the taste of the breast milk and it can go a little bit sour. And in that situation, the baby may then refuse it for that reason. So if your baby doesn't like drinking milk after it's been freezer burnt, or if you want to avoid it altogether, you need to store your breast milk in an airtight container before it is frozen. So for me, although I had breast milk bags, I didn't use them much at all. One of the reasons was because I had low breast milk supply, so it's not like I needed a lot of these bags to use to store my breast milk because there wasn't much anyway. And I also found that when I stored them in these freezer bags, because you transfer the breast milk so many times, you go from the breast pump bottle into the freezer bag and then into a formula bottle, I found that I lost volume. So in order to preserve as much volume as possible, I chose to store my milk in the formula bottle straight away and froze them in that. So in terms of storing it, what's important is to write the date of when you pumped the breast milk. And that's so that you know which breast milk is older, which breast milk is newer. You want to use the oldest breast milk first, if possible. And you also will know when a certain breast milk has been around for too long, it's more than 3 months old, and you need to throw it out. Every time you pump, you will get a variable volume as well. For me, sometimes I got 90 mils, sometimes I got 140 mils. So in order to keep track of this, I would grab some sticky tape and stick it down the side of the bottle, grab a marker pen, and write the date on it as well as the volume. And next time, if I say want 130 mils, I know to grab the bottle with 90 mils and another bottle with 40 mils, thaw them and put them together. And to save time, with this sticky tape that you've got down the side of the bottle, you don't have to put a new one each time. Just grab a whole length and stick it down the side of the bottle, and you cross out the dates as you go. The next thing is sleep and rest. Look, I know this is a really hard one because you've just got a newborn, you've got 2,000 things to do, but getting as much sleep and rest as possible would make a big difference to increasing your breast milk supply. When a mother is stressed out, their breast milk supply tends to drop. Well, in my opinion, breast milk is liquid gold and only your body can make it for your baby. And in the grand scheme of things, it's a relatively short period of time in your life if you're breastfeeding for, say, 3 or 4 months. If possible, get your partner or your family to help you with housework, accept any help that you can get. So I would try and get any paid help within that period of time if I could afford it. Things like groceries, you can do things like bulk buy and get them delivered, get Uber Eats or something like that. Next thing is hydration and nutrition. So hydration is really important. What I did was I would drink a whole jar of water before breastfeeding, as well as a whole jar of water after breastfeeding. And this was to make sure I stayed as hydrated as possible so that my body had the fluid to make the breast milk. It is also important to eat as healthy as possible. So for me, this was not a time to diet, and it really wasn't a time that I prioritized getting my pre-baby body back. In terms of exercise, I think that's all very individual as to when you can start it, because it depends on if there was any birth trauma, whether you had a cesarean section. So do get clearance from your doctor before you start exercise. At the start, when you're breastfeeding or when you're expressing milk, as we already mentioned earlier on, it's not that easy to get out of the house anyway. So perhaps some low-impact home-based exercise would be more appropriate, at least in the first 3 to 4 months. The next thing is galactagogues, or products that increase breast milk supply. So there would be things like oats, fenugreek, brewer's yeast, and Weleda tea. What I did was I would have a bowl of oats with fenugreek seeds as well as brewer's yeast added in every morning. I also had lactation cookies. Lactation cookies can contain a lot of sugars, and I'm also not a baker, so I kind of just got a no-bake recipe using bananas to sweeten the cookies. I also forced myself to drink Weleda tea. Anyway, things you do for breast milk. I also had at least 1 cup of Milo with half a teaspoon of brewer's yeast in it. And in consultation with my family doctor, I also took a medication called domperidone. It is a medication that helps increase the breast milk supply. And if that's something that you're interested in, I would suggest that you have a chat to your doctor about it. The next one that I've got is a tip. So when your breast milk supply is low and you're pumping it into the breast milk bottle, feed the breast milk to your baby first. If you're supplementing your baby's feeds with formula, do not mix the breast milk with the formula. And that's because if the baby doesn't finish the entire volume of mixed breast milk and formula, then your baby would have missed out on all that breast milk that you worked so hard to pump out. And of course, the nutritional benefits of breast milk as well. So always feed the breast milk first, and once they finish that and you want to give them some more, make them a separate batch of formula. And if you watch my channel, you would have heard me say before, if you've got long hair, do expect to have your hair tied up while you're breastfeeding the baby or while you're pumping. I lived in a ponytail for approximately a year because my hair was really long and it was getting in the way of pumping as well as breastfeeding. And the next thing I want to talk about is Haakaa. I don't know how to say it, but I'll put it on screen. I've not used this product myself, but watching other moms, I understand that this is placed against one breast to catch any letdown. So when you're breastfeeding your baby on one side, sometimes you'll get a letdown on the other breast as well. And that's when you would place this Haakaa on to catch any of these precious drops of breast milk from the letdown. I didn't eat one myself because it never happened to me. The next thing is DeQuervain's Tenosynovitis. I know about this because it happened to myself and it is so common. I've heard so many other mothers complain about it. That's when the tendon across the wrist up here is inflamed, usually from breastfeeding the baby or doing other tasks. Of course, please go and see your doctor to get it diagnosed and to get proper treatment for it. But I have a few tips that I'd like to share that I found particularly helpful. Because the tendon is irritated when your thumb is pulled down, a lot of the activities that involves your thumb gripping something and moving the wrist can really trigger the pain. So if I was grasping something with my hand, as much as possible, I would grasp it just with my forefingers and leave my thumb out like so. And that meant that I didn't trigger this as much. The other thing was tying your hair can really aggravate this tenosynovitis. So hopefully you only have one hand affected, like me. My left hand was affected, not so much my right. When you're tying your hair up in a ponytail using a hair tie, you loop your hair through once, you twist it, and as you thread your thumb through the loop again to try and pull it back the other way, that can really aggravate that thumb. So if you only have one side affected, what you can do is you can loop your hair through once, pass the hair tie over to the other side, loop that, and using your unaffected side, tie your hair like such. I found doing these couple of things made a huge difference to my tenosynovitis. And when I say made a huge difference, it still took 4 to 6 weeks to get better, and it was still easily triggered for 6 to 12 months after it had gotten better. If you can avoid it, that will be better, or if you can identify the problem early, it's better to get it sorted early. The other thing that you can use is a splint that goes up to this joint at the thumb. And I wore this predominantly at night because it was really hard to wear a hand splint during the daytime. It meant that it was really hard to wash my hands. So I found it most practical to wear the splint just at night. And essentially that protected my thumb from being yanked by the bed sheets. Now, I've not talked about the different breastfeeding positions in this video, but if you're interested, I will leave a link for you. I found this information from Medela particularly helpful. Now, in terms of breastfeeding videos, I have one more scheduled around December about returning to work breastfeeding. If you would like to see this video earlier than December, please leave me a comment and I'll try and get that ready earlier for you. So the next video is going to be on how to manually handle a baby. To make sure you don't miss that video, please subscribe and turn on notifications so that you get informed when that video becomes available. And while you wait for my next video, you can enjoy these videos over here. If you like this video, please give me a like because that will make a huge difference to my channel. And also don't forget to share it with someone who you think will find it helpful. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!